Hello, my friends. How are you all keeping this evening, this afternoon, this morning? Wherever you are in the world, let me adjust my chair. I've just suddenly realized it's not in the most comfortable position it's ever been. Sorry. Oh my God. Oh, yeah, you usually try to sort that out before you go live. Anyway, good evening, good evening, good evening from the beautiful, bright Boyne Valley. Sunset tonight here in the town of Drogheda, Bridge at the Ford. 8:32 p.m. is the time of sunset, which is 32 minutes from now. A beautiful evening. It's a little bit cool, but it's bright. The sky is clear. It was cloudy a lot of the day here, although a lot of people around Ireland had nice sunny weather. It remained cloudy on the east coast for a while. Hope you're all keeping well. We didn't meet as usual yesterday because I had another appointment, but I'm glad to be able to make up for it this evening with episode number 221 of Live Irish Myths. Really astonishing. And this is part 6 of Charles Squire. And we are that far into the book. This much is read and this much isn't. If that's let me try and work this out now for a second. Oh, I reckon that's about a quarter, not even a quarter. So 24 could be, wow, could be 25 or 30 episodes in this. I need to read faster. And there's loads more books that we can read. Tons. Anyway, let me say hello to Guido Bruce, who's the first commenter tonight. Guido is watching on Facebook. Very good to see you. He also tells us that spring has finally arrived in the Netherlands, which we are very glad to hear. Spring has definitely arrived here. We're getting all sorts of flowers. We're getting the dawn chorus. We've been getting that for a while. And hopefully, it stops raining for a while. We've had an awful lot of rain. But everything's very lush and green and verdant, which is the way we like it, because Ireland has 40 shades of green, don't you know? And it is called the Emerald Isle. Wayne Bird is telling us that there are 14 hours of sunlight now. Buds, seedlings, and flowers are coming on. Yeah, it's a feast. It's brilliant. Wayne, delighted to see you in the house. Elaine Dent Lingenfelter has an overcast day in Texas where it's still 22 Celsius or 72 Fahrenheit. My God. Even when the sun's not shining, it's still a baking hot day. I know, you're going to say that's not baking hot. In Ireland, 22 degrees Celsius is a decent summer day. Erica Bow is here. Hello, Erica. Fáilte, sláinte, and all that. Hope you're keeping well. We haven't seen you in a while. I hope life is treating you kindly. Dennis Dwyer is in the house. Good evening to you all. And what a fine few days. Yeah, hopefully things on the up, Dennis. On the upswing as we head inevitably towards the next of the 8 festivals in the ancient year, which is Bealtaine, the cross-quarter day between vernal equinox and summer solstice. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to summer and long days and hopefully some really nice weather. Rex Fortenberry joins us. Got the book and will be following along. Brilliant stuff. You can make sure that I'm reading everything right, Rex. Keep me in line. Sandra Boothroyd is saying good evening, Trenonoa. Sandra, Giant Oak is in the house on Durramore. Good evening to you watching on YouTube. Caitlin Moon is watching from Dublin. There's a grand old stretch this evening. There certainly is. More noticeable because it's clear and it's a bright evening. Apparently, there's a chance of Aurora Borealis this evening, so keep an eye out for that if you're in the northerly latitudes. Is that sunshine I see coming in through a window? It is not direct sunlight because the sun is too low, but it is strong daylight is what it is, which, a few weeks ago we didn't have. Alan Hoskins is saying hello from Ballina, Killaloe, where it reached a top of 19 today. Wow. You did better than us. It definitely wasn't 19 here today, Alan. But send a few degrees over this way, would you? Desiree Riley's in the house. Me and Amadeus are happy to be tuning in any moment. You will hear Saskia. She was let out into the yard about 10 minutes ago. And she wouldn't come in just before I started the live stream. And she's now sitting in the yard, looking at the back door and also looking in the window at me. So I suspect within moments we will hear yelping, as in, let me in. But Elaine is saying that she'll be in Ballina in about 4 weeks. Is that the same Ballina Killaloe, not Ballina County Mayo, which is made even more famous by the visit of a certain United States politician in the past week? Britt Griffin, politician, figurehead, leader, say no more. Snowing earlier, but most of this winter snow has melted, and the red-winged blackbirds have arrived. Wow. Hello to everyone. Where are you, Britt? Remind us. Red-winged blackbirds. We don't see those here. Fantastic stuff. Happy to be back, says Desiree. We're always delighted to have you back. Degrees sent, says Alan. Brilliant stuff. Just in time for night time. Sotonar says Northern Ontario. Wow. Yeah. Is it? Yeah. How long is summer in Northern Ontario? Is it like 2 weeks? A bit like Ireland. Not as bad. We're not as bad. Sotonar, says Trononoa Mogina. A very good evening to you. Ballina Tipperary. Oh, brilliant. Elaine is going to be in your part of the world, Alan. And me and Elaine have, as we say in ham radio terminology, not ham radio term, it's probably more of CB talk. We had the eyeball QSO, which means we actually saw each other face to face. We met in person. Not a huge, well, I suppose up until last May, wasn't it? When we met at the Hill of Tara. Not a lot of the two could say that, but that number is growing. Irish technical thinker who's Marcus has joined us. Hope everyone is doing well. How are you getting on with the book It? I think I've certainly passed 800. Last week was very busy, not least because we had lots of extra rehearsals with the brass band. We went to Athlone on Saturday. This is the Drogheda Brass Band, where we regained our national title by winning the National Band Championships on Saturday. So last week was busy, and I think I might be in the high 800s. And looking forward to finishing it now. I mean, it's a long time since I read a novel running to 1,000 or 1,100 pages. Amadeus is patiently awaiting Saskia's and Coda's hellos. Yeah. Coda has been very boisterous today in particular. He was out in the garden earlier, and whenever a bird flew over, he would pounce and start, barking up at the bird. And if the bird landed on the eave of a house or on a pole or something, he'd be jumping up and trying to. And it's like, no, Coda, you are never going to be able to catch the bird if the bird is 30 feet in the air, Anne McCallum has joined us. Hello, Anton, and all the mighty to us. Such weird weather here. Summer one day with temperature 28 Celsius, and then next day back down to 4 Celsius with overnight -2, then snow flurries and hail next day. But flowers and trees have come alive again, so it must be spring. Congrats with the band, first place. Yeah, and if you're interested in seeing, thank you, Anne. And yeah, it is. And I know the Californians have been saying they've been really weird, new normal, they're calling it, really weird weather. John Main was there for quite a number of months and was telling me quite regularly that he felt as if he'd brought the weather from Belmullet in Mayo, where it does a lot of rain. He said it rained an awful. There's Saskia, it rained an awful lot during the winter. I am going to just copy link address. I'm going to paste in the video if you're even remotely interested in it. Hang on, I got it. If you're remotely interested in the Drogheda Brass Band's winning performance of the test piece, actually own choice piece, called Lions of Legends by Thierry de la Royale. And it's got some real line roars in it. I know, not what you'd expect from a brass band. Who else has joined us? Adrian O'Beglin is in the house. Adrian, how are things? I hope you are well. Seamus Keenan is here. Seamus, you must be hard up for something to do. Timor Leste was very strong on SSB there about an hour ago on 17 meters and 15 meters. Worked them on both with like one call on 15 and a few calls on 17 with an Antron 99. Easy. good conditions to that part of the world. Timor-Leste. I bet you most the viewers don't even know where that is. It's amazing what ham radio teaches you about geography. Big congrats to the brass band. Your family is so talented. The Colorado weather has been nuts too. Yeah, it seems to be up and down all over the place. And yes, all my 5 offspring are in the brass band. So you could say that music is in the family. Maybe someday, maybe, just maybe some stupid day when I'm feeling ridiculous, I will take out the euphonium and play you a few tunes. Anyway, that's some of the other stuff that goes on in the background here. Life is busy. Life is busy. Good evening to you all. So I'll keep saying hello to new people as they come in. If you're reading the book, we are picking up in the middle of page 97 of the Charles Squire book. Let me just welcome John Main. Banach to all the 2. Apologies, I missed you the past few weeks, but here with you now. Sending mythical greetings from Kissamos, Crete. Any place name that begins with the word kiss has to be a place that's full of love. John, I hope that you're having a ball over there, and I hope that the weather is really nice, because we've just been talking about California and Ontario and places that have had a lot of rain and snow and all the rest. You know, is there a program scheduled for today, says Mo, or is this a meet and greet? No, this is the regular live stream. It was postponed from yesterday. It's usually held on a Monday, but I had another appointment yesterday evening, so I had to postpone. So this is the episode 221 of Live Irish Myth. Spike Willow has joined us. Hello, Spike. Barbara Murphy has joined us from a warm Tucson, Arizona. And that's the sort of stuff that needs to be spread around. Absolutely. Barbara, delighted that you could make it. And just making sure that I'm not missing anyone. And I don't think so. So, shall we get on with it? Don't forget, as usual, if you're watching on YouTube, please do subscribe to the channel, like the stream, make plenty of comments, share it afterwards if you like, and help boost the figures. We don't have a huge following on YouTube, which is very strange. Mythical Ireland has 1,400 videos. There's 1,400 videos on the YouTube channel, and there are only 19,000 followers. It's strange for a YouTube channel that's been around for 15 years. So do please spread the word. And if you're on Facebook, don't forget to follow the Mythical Ireland page and join the Mythical Ireland community. We're also on Instagram and Twitter. And most importantly, is the scrolling thing at the bottom reminding you to please support Mythical Ireland by considering becoming a patron. Patrons at the Bronze Age level at the moment are, what shall I say, being treated. I don't know if treated is the right word. Maybe they'll have a different view, but are getting a page-by-page introduction to my next book, which is in progress. I'm going to let the dog in before I start reading. She is getting rather impatient now, so please bear with me a moment while I let her into the house. And drop my phone. That's not a good idea. Come on. Now, are you all comfortable? Because it is time for us to continue with our reading of the chapter that is called The Gaelic Argonauts. And I happened to be reading something that I found very interesting. Well, we read this in school, but to be honest with you, I was bored and I couldn't concentrate. But I have to go back to all this stuff. Is it Aeneas or Aeneas? Fascinating that when the Trojan remnant left, I think it was Sicily, to head to what would later be Rome, to the western coast of Italy, that a huge storm rose up on the sea and their fleet was scattered. And I was just thinking about the parallels with the story of the Milesians arriving into Ireland. And this is one of the many reasons that some scholars have a tendency to say that a lot of Irish myth was borrowed from classical mythology. I just wonder how much these scholars have indulged in comparative mythology, because I mean, you see the same sort of storylines, patterns, characters, events, happenings, etc., in diverse mythologies around the world. And if you're going to say it was plagiarized, well, who plagiarized who, and where did it start? You know, and that is one of the questions that seems unanswerable to a degree in terms of the world's mythologies. Anyway, I was very interested to get back into that. I have a tendency, a stupid tendency, but it's a tendency nonetheless, because I seem to believe in the mantra that variety is the spice of life. I have a tendency to read a number of books at once, and I don't mean exactly at the same time. I mean, I'm reading Stephen King's It at the moment. I'm also reading the Wild book, the one about the fall of the House of Wild. I'm reading several others, and I started dipping into Virgil the Aeneid because I picked it up for €1 in a secondhand bookshop. And believe it or not, this copy was actually printed in the 1950s, 1958, and is pretty clean. I love the very, very first line of it. I really, really loved this. I will get on to the readings very quickly. I love the very first line, which is, if I can find it. Can anybody quote it to me? I am that poet who in times past made the light melody of pastoral poetry. Lovely stuff. So that's Virgil. I'll be reading more of that. And where comparisons are to be found, I will be taking notes. It's something that I am deficient in. I'm the first to hold my hands up. I am deficient in my knowledge of the world's mythologies, even classical mythology, which we were taught in secondary school, but which completely bored me. Don't ask why. Long story, and I'll get to tell it someday. Regret that now, of course. Really wish that I'd taken more interest. But perhaps if our teachers had told us the richness of Irish mythology, I might have been more interested. Anyway, I want to say before we really do get going, Peter is in the house. Office Care 36, also known as Peter Woods, watching on YouTube. Chungus Khan is in the house. Tommy on show. I've always heard, what is it? I need. Is it I need? Is that how you're saying that, Caitlin? Yeah, I don't know how to pronounce it. I think the Aeneid was, I think, how we pronounced it when we were in school. Desir is cleaning up the ranch after a long winter. These things need to be done. Samantha Healy has joined us. Hello, Samantha. Welcome to Live Irish Myths. Great to see you here. The same themes echo across the corpus in different individual permutations. Yes, indeed. I'm reading Blood Meridian at the moment, the darkest book I've ever read. Could you not just turn on a light? Terrible joke. Selkie Woman is also here and is happy to be here. We're happy that you are here. I'm just sitting here cracking my knuckles. Mythology is kind of my thing. I need. I need the Aeneid. Greetings, fellow nerds and miscreants. Chris, you know us too well. Very good evening to you. Watching on YouTube. I tend to do the same thing, Anthony. I think I'm reading about 10 books or more right now. I don't know. I hardly ever finish one. That's the point. Maggie Barra is joining us from Oregon in the USA. Hello to all our friends in the Pacific Northwest. You're very welcome to Live Irish Myths. Maggie, Astro is late again, but I'm here. We haven't actually started the reading yet. Just about to do so. So thank you for joining us. Better late than never. Wizard is never late, nor is he early. He arrives precisely when he means to. Still not getting it, like the letter A. So not I need, A need. Like what? No. Caitlin, you're right. I'm still. Hey, hang on a second. Now, let's just do this. Google is your best friend. How to pronounce Aeneid? She's kind of saying Ennead. Like it's spelled phonetically Uhneuhd. Ennead. Not like Aeneid. Ennead. Is that right? I don't know. And YouTube wants to play me an ad, so no, I'm not going to do that. I need, according to another website there, but who's right? You know, Lily Shambles has finally caught alive. Brilliant stuff. Yeah, just to let you know, we do usually live stream on a Monday, but it's Tuesday because I was busy last night and I couldn't live stream. Annie Ed says Chungus. It seems that everybody pronounces it their own way. And Caitlin Moon says it's all Greek to me, which it is indeed. To me, too. There we go. Aeneid. The Aeneid. Aeneas. Is it Aeneas or Aeneas? Why did I even start this discussion? Curse you, Virgil. No, I take it back. Never mind. You were good. You were good in your day, in fairness. Yous all wrote stuff down long before we Irish, and we left it to mostly to the ecclesiastics to do the writing down, and they didn't like some of what they were writing down, so they added a few bits in. Jacqueline Kelly Adams is in the house. Hello, Jacqueline. And it is likewise a pleasure to see certainly your name and your profile picture and your comment. I hope you're in good form, and hope you get a chance to come back to the fair shores of Ireland sometime soon. Lily Shamble says, whoops, a rabbit hole. Yes. Why do I do this? No more rabbit holes. Getting straight to it. This tale is inevitable. And I've fourth word, and I read it wrong. Not a good start. This tale is evidently the work of some ancient Irish storyteller who wished to compile from various sources a more or less complete account of how the Gaelic gods obtained their legendary possessions. The spear of I need to watch these pronunciations again. Pesar, king of Persia, is obviously the same weapon as the lance or spear of Lu, which another tradition describes as having been brought by the Tuatha De Danann from their original home in the city of Gorias. Fáilinish, the whelp of the king of Uria, is Lu's hound of the mightiest deeds, which was irresistible in battle and which turned any running water it bathed in into wine. Wow, a dog that by bathing in water could turn it into wine. Wine, W-I-N-E, not wine. Wow, what a talent. I wish my dogs could do that. A property here transferred to the magic pig's skin of King Tush. The seven swine, this is the story, of course, that we are reading at the moment of the fate of the sons of Turann. Sometimes also called the fate of the children of Turann. The seven swine of the king of page turn, of the king of the golden pillars, must be the same undying porkers from whose flesh Manannán mac Lir made the, quote, feast of age, end quote, which preserved the eternal youth of the gods. It was with horses and chariot that ran along the surface of the sea that Manannán used to journey to and fro between Éireann and the Celtic Elysium in the west. The apples that grew in the garden of the Hesperides were surely of the same celestial growth as those that fed the inhabitants of that immortal country, sometimes known as Awan Aulach, isn't it? The Isle of Apples. While the cooking spit reminds us of three such implements at Tara, made by Govnu on Gowa. Where is he, by the way? Where is our Tom King? Tom King. He never misses a live stream unless there's something really important going on. I personally believe, says Chris, like many or most, mythology is composite characters and events. Yeah, it's interesting to I think it's interesting to try to trace some of the origins of some of the stories. But um, yeah, what I don't give into is this wholesale idea, or this idea that the monks, you know, copied wholesale the mythology from European sources. The mythology, I mean Homer's. Yeah. Oh, okay. The burden of collecting all these treasures was placed upon the shoulders of the three sons of Turann. And of course, as we heard last week, this is Lou's blood fine. And Lou was the son of Cian, who had been murdered by the sons of Turann, the three of them, when they found him alone on the plain of Morhevna, and to try and hide himself from them. If his own brothers had been there, he would have gladly faced them in battle. But because he was on his own, he uh, hit himself on the head with a druidical wand, or a druid's wand, and turned himself into a pig and merged into a herd of swine that were rambling across the plain of Morhevna. But Brian turned his brothers Jochover and what was Jochar and Jocharva into bloodhounds, and of course they sniffed out the correct pig, and Cian pleaded that they don't kill him in the form of a pig, but rather as a human. They allowed him to retake his human shape, and he said that the fine would be all the greater for killing him as a human, but they killed him all the same. It's Tom must be busy in the forge. Yes, he must be too busy, but he usually listens from the forge. That's the curious thing. I hope he is busy in all the best meaning of that word. Caitlin Moon says, myths spread with languages. There's a whole field of study tracing folklore motifs. Yes, indeed. Mark Gordon has joined us from Iowa. A very good afternoon to you, Mark. Thank you for tuning in. They consulted together, that is, the sons of Turann, and agreed that they could never hope to succeed unless they had Manannán's magic horse, Splendid Mane, and Manannán's magic coracle, Wave Sweeper. But both these had been lent by Manannán to Lugh himself, by coincidence. So the sons of Turann were obliged to humble themselves, to beg them from Lugh. The sun god would not lend them the horse. By the way, when you see things, and this is one of the issues that people have with Squire's work, when you see him saying the sun god, that is not what he said in the original Irish. That is him sort of filling in the gaps for us, as it were. The sun god would not lend them the horse for fear of making their task too easy. But he let them have the boat because he knew how much the spear of Pesser and the horses of Dor would be needed in the coming war with the Fomors. They bade farewell to their father and went down to the shore and put out to sea, taking their sister with them. Which portion of the fine shall we seek first? Said the others to Brian. We will seek them in the order in which they were demanded, he replied. So they directed the magic boat to sail to the garden of the Hesperides, and presently they arrived there. They landed at a harbour and held a council of war. It was decided that their best chance of obtaining 3 of the apples would be by taking the shapes of hawks. Thus they would have strength enough in their claws to carry the apples away, together with sufficient quickness upon the wing to hope to escape the arrows, darts, and sling stones which would be shot and hurled at them by the warders of the garden. They swooped down upon the orchard from above. It was done so swiftly that they carried off the 3 apples, unhit either by shaft or stone. But their difficulties were not yet over. The king of the country had 3 daughters who were well skilled in witchcraft. By sorcery, they changed themselves into 3 ospreys and pursued the 3 hawks. But the sons of Turann reached the shore first and, changing themselves into swans, dived into the sea. They came up close to their coracle and got into it and sailed swiftly away with the spoil. Thus their first quest was finished, and they voyaged on to Greece to seek the pig skin of King Tuish. Am I pronouncing that right? Let me just go back on that and just see if there was a recommended pronunciation for Tuis. Tuis? I mean, if you were saying it in Irish, it'd be Tuish, wouldn't it? Let's not worry about it too much. No one could go without some excuse into a king's court, so they decided to disguise themselves as poets and to tell the doorkeeper that they were professional bards from Erin seeking largesse at the hands of kings. The porter let them into the great hall where the poets of Greece were singing before the king. When those had all finished, Brian rose and asked permission to show his art. This was accorded, and he sang, O Tuish, we conceal not thy name. We praise thee as the oak above the kings, the skin of a pig, bounty without hardness. This is the reward which I ask for it. A stormy host and raging sea are a dangerous power should one oppose it. The skin of a pig, bounty without hardness. This is the reward I ask, O Tuish. That is a good poem, said the king, only I do not understand it. I will explain it, said Brian. We praise thee as the oak above the kings. This means that, as the oak excels all other trees, so do you excel all other kings in nobility and generosity. And this, my dear friends, is what we call in Ireland a good old bit of arse-licking. The skin of a pig, bounty without hardness. That is a pig's skin which you have, O Tuish, and which I should like to receive as the reward of my poem. A stormy host and raging sea are a dangerous power should one oppose it. This means to say that we are not used to going without anything on which we have set our hearts, O Tuish, which, let's be frank, ladies and gentlemen, sounds a bit like a less than veiled threat to the good health of the king if he does not give them the pigskin. I should have liked your poem better, replied the king, if my pigskin had not been mentioned in it. There you go. It was not a wise thing for you to have done, O poet. But I will measure 3 fills of red gold out of the skin, and you shall have those. May all good be thine, O king, answered Brian. I knew that I should get a noble reward. Bit more arse-licking going on there. Kelly Kelly is in the house. Hello there, and a very good afternoon to you. My miscellaneous. No. Do swans like salt water? I think swans in this part of the world are mostly a freshwater. They tend to stay in rivers and ponds and lakes. So the king sent for the pig's skin to measure out the gold with. But as soon as Brian saw it, he seized it with his left hand and slew the man who was holding it. And Jochar and Jocharva also hacked about them, and they cut their way down to the boat, leaving the king of Greece among the dead behind them. Thank you very much, Mr. King. You don't mind if we run you through while we steal your magic pigskin. And now we will go and get King Pesar's spear, said Brian. So, leaving Greece, they sailed in their coracle to Persia, as you do. Sounds like they're having a Mediterranean cruise, bit of a forerunner to the modern idea of a cruise. Perhaps the modern cruise a little bit more enjoyable and a little bit less hazard-filled. Is Tom in the house, is he? Mavanwe Millward is here, also forgot the change of day. I think that's what happened, Tom King, is it? Is Tom here, is he? Look, we're only talking. He must have heard us. His ears were burning off him. Their plan of disguising themselves as poets had served them so well that they decided to make use of it again. So they went into the King of Persia's hall in the same way as they'd entered that of the King of Greece. Brian first listened to the poets of Persia singing. Then he sang his own song. Small the esteem of any spear with Pesser. It's spelled Piseaor, but the pronunciation is apparently Pesser. So I'm just going to say Pesser. So don't take the Pesser out of me, please. Don't take the pisser out of me. Small the esteem of any spear with Pesser. The battles of foes are broken. No oppression with Pesser. Everyone whom he wounds. A yew tree, the finest of the wood. It is called King without opposition. May that splendid shaft drive on yon crowd into their wounds of death. That is a good poem, O man of Erin, said the king. But why is my spear mentioned in it? The meaning is this, replied Brian. Brian! His name's Brian! I should like to receive that spear as a reward for my poem. You make a rash request, said the king. If I spare your life after having heard it, it will be a sufficient reward for your poem. Brian had one of the magic apples in his hand, and he remembered its boomerang-like quality. He hurled it full in the King of Persia's face, dashing out his brains, as you do when you throw an apple at someone. The Persians flew to arms, but the three sons of Turann conquered them and made them yield up the spear. Why did he bother singing a poem in the first place? Why did he just go in and throw the apple and get it over and done with and get out quickly, you know? They had now to travel to Sicily to obtain the horses and chariot of King... there's another pronunciation guide here. Dobha, or which is pronounced Dobber. There you go. Let's making sure that I'm not missing anybody. Oh, there he is. Hello from Glendalough. Goa is on the road. Well, there you go. There, that explains it. He's down in Brendan's neck of the woods. Very good. I hope Glendalough is fabulous, Tom, which it always is. A fabulous, beautiful part of the world. Anyway, we're all good. We're all good. He's here. He's accounted for. Where was he? But they were afraid to go as poets this time, for fear the fame of their deeds might have got abroad. They therefore decided to pretend to be mercenary soldiers from Erin and offer the King of Sicily their service. This, they thought, would be the easiest way of finding out where the horses and the chariot were kept. So they went and stood on the green before the royal court. When the King of Sicily heard that there had come mercenaries from Erin seeking wages from the kings of the world, he invited them to take service with him. They agreed, but though they stayed with him a fortnight and a month, they never saw the horses or even found out where they were kept. A fortnight and a month. So they went to the king and announced that they wished to leave him. Why, he asked, for he did not want them to go. We will tell you, O king, replied Brian. It is because we have not been honoured with your confidence, as we have been accustomed with other kings. You have 2 horses and a chariot, the best in the world, and we have not even been allowed to see them. I would have shown them to you on the first day if you had asked me, said the king. And you shall see them at once, for I have seldom had warriors with me so good as you are, and I do not wish you to leave me. So he sent, arse-licking, going the opposite direction this time. So he sent for the steeds and had them yoked to the chariot, and the sons of Turann were witness of their marvellous speed, and how they could run equally well over land and water. Quite a skill. Brian made a sign to his brothers, and they watched their opportunity carefully. And As the chariot passed close beside them, Brian leaped into it, hurling its driver over the side. Then, turning the horses, he struck King Dobber with Pezar's spear and killed him. He took his two brothers up into the chariot and they drove away. Simple as. Equal opportunity arse-licking in this text, says Caitlin. Heather Marie Leaning arrived late too, forgot, no problem at all. I upset the schedule by having something else on a Monday night. I know, how dare it, you know? But great to see you all the same. By the time the sons of Turann reached the country of, I don't know how to pronounce it, Easal. Is that Esel or Assel? Esel, we'll call it. King of the Pillars of Gold. Rumour had gone before them. Or was there a pronunciation guide to Esel? Assel, yes, it's pronounced Assel. There you go. Asal. So that's how I shall pronounce it. So let's do that again. By the time the sons of Turann reached the country of Assel, king of the Pillars of Gold, rumour had gone before them. The king came down to the harbour to meet them and asked them if it were really true that so many kings had fallen at their hands. No, we killed them. Never mind. Poor joke. My apologies. That's not what it says in the text. The king did ask if it was really true that so many kings had fallen at their hands. They replied that it was true, but that they had no quarrel with any of them, only they must obtain at all costs the fine demanded by Lugh. Then Assel asked them why they had come to his land, and they told him that they needed his 7 pigs to add to the tribute. So Assel thought it better to give them up and to make friends with the 3 sons of Turann than to fight with such warriors. The sons of Turann were very glad at this, for they were growing weary of battles. It serves you right, lads. You shouldn't have started it by killing an innocent man. You know? There you go. Tom, we had that quote earlier, actually. I was just saying that. A wizard is never late, nor is he early. A wizard. Interesting word. A wizard with metal. A wizard with steel, huh? It happened that the king of... Oh, how do I pronounce that? Iroda. It's spelled Iorudhe, which I imagine looks like an Irish word. Euroia. But apparently it's pronounced much more simply, which I've forgotten already. Iroda. Okay. Let's do that. It happened that the king of Iroda, who had the hound whelp that Lugh had demanded, was the king of King Assel's daughter. Sorry, was the husband of King Assel's daughter. Therefore, King Assel did not wish that there should be fighting between him and the 3 sons of Turann. He proposed to Brian and his brothers. I need to finish that sentence, folks, before you get any ideas. That he should sail with them to Iroda and try to persuade the king of the country to give up the hound whelp peacefully. They consented, and all set foot safely on the delightful, wonderful shores of Iroda, as the manuscript calls them. But King Assel's son-in-law would not listen to reason. He assembled his warriors and fought, but the sons of Turann defeated them and compelled their king to yield up the hound whelp as the ransom for his life. All these quests had been upon the earth, but the next was harder. No coracle, not even Manannan's wave sweeper, could penetrate to the island of Fianchuive. Let me see if there's a pronunciation guy. I hope there is. Fincara, according to the pronunciation guide. Wow. Finca or A. Okay, let's do that. Could penetrate to the island of Fincora in the depths of the sea that severs Erin from Alba. So Brian left his brothers and put on his water dress. With his transparency of glass upon his head. I'm making no comment. Evidently an ancient Irish anticipation of the modern diver's dress. Thus equipped, he explored the bottom of the sea for 14 days before he found the island. But when at last he reached it and entered the hall of its queen, she and her sea maidens were so amazed at Brian's hardihood in having penetrated to their kingdom that they presented him with the cooking spit and sent him back safe. Fair play. That makes things a little bit easier. By this time, Lugh had found out by his magic arts that the sons of Turann had obtained all the treasures he had demanded as the blood fine. He desired to get them safely into his own custody before his victims went to give their 3 shouts upon Meachuin's hill. And again, there's probably a pronunciation for that, which is probably wrong. Yeah, I'm going to just call it Meachuin. Speaking of fine, I parked downtown here in Drogheda the other day, and I tell you, my parking must have been really good because when I came back, there was a little ticket on the windscreen and it said parking fine. Sorry, I apologize. Oh my God. No, he didn't just go there. I did. And I went home really happy because, somebody left a really nice note saying parking fine. He therefore wove a druidical spell around them so that they forgot the rest of their task altogether and sailed back to Erin. What was the rest of their task after they got the items but before they sailed back? Three shouts on a hill in the north of Lochlan, which is Lochlan. Was Lochlan Scotland or is Lochlan like Scandinavia? Oh, I'm having a brain melt fart moment. The parking rewards police, says Michael Pike. They searched for Lugh to give him the things, but he had gone away, leaving word that they were to be handed over to Nuada, the king of the Tuatha Dé Danann. As soon as they were in safekeeping, Lugh came back to Tara and found the sons of Turann there, and he said to them, "Do you not know that it is unlawful to keep back any part of a blood fine? So have you given those 3 shouts upon Meachuin's hill?" Then the magic mist of forgetfulness fell from them, and they remembered. Sorrowfully, they went back to complete their task. Meachuin himself was watching for them, and when he saw them land, he came down to the beach. Brian attacked him, and they fought with the swiftness of 2 bears and the ferocity of 2 lions until Meachuin fell. Then Meachuin's 3 sons, Corc, Cun, and Aed, came out to avenge their father, and they drove their spears through the bodies of the 3 sons of Turann. But the 3 sons of Turann also drove their spears through the bodies of the 3 sons of Meachuin. The 3 sons of Meachuin were killed, and the 3 sons of Turann were so sorely wounded that birds might have flown through their bodies from one side to the other. Nevertheless, Brian was still able to stand upright, and he held his 2 brothers, one in each hand, and kept them on their feet, and all together they gave 3 faint, feeble shouts. Their coracle bore them, still living, to Erin. They sent their father Turann as a supplicant to Lugh, begging him to lend them the magic pig's skin to heal their wounds. But Lugh would not, for he had counted upon their fight with the sons of Miochin to avenge his father Cian's death. So the children of Turann resigned themselves to die, and their father made a farewell song over them and over himself, and died with them. Thus ends that famous tale, the fate of the sons of Turann, known as one of the three sorrowful stories of Erin. Yes, indeed. Shall we continue? The next chapter is chapter 9, and it's called The War with the Giants. Yes, Caitlin. My thoughts exactly. That was especially depressing. Revenge and all that. And a pointless quest. And yet, Marcus says, brilliant. Love giants. I always feel a bit bad for the sons after going to all that trouble. Yeah, I know. Pointless, like, you know. And Chungus is excited. Woo! War, oh them big boys. Yes. Glad I tuned in for a cheery bit, says Lily. Was that the joke I told? And everybody's at this moment is going, did he tell a joke? He said something about a parking fine, but I don't think it was a joke. My wife said to me, I don't know what a cloning machine is. I said, that makes two of us. Shall we proceed? Sotonar is explaining that there are meanings, different meanings to his username. I like slumberer, actually, and soothing. I definitely don't like Undertaker. Yes. That parking joke was arresting, says Gail. It's streets ahead, isn't it? Never mind. Yes. Yes. By the time the 7 years of preparation, by this time, of course, if we rewind to where we were last week, before we told the story of how Cian was killed by the sons of Turann, we were talking about the fact that Bress had been deposed as the king of the Dedannans and had gone back to the Fomorians, and they had started to plan war against the Dedannans, and the Dedannans had started to prepare for this. So 7 years of preparation for this war were necessary. By this time, the 7 years of preparation had come to an end. A week before the day of Samhain, always a critical day, a critical time in the old calendar, the Morrigu discovered that the Fomors had landed upon Erin. She had once sent a messenger to tell the Dagda, who ordered his druids and sorcerers to go to the ford of the river Unyush. Yeah, that river is spelt various names. Unshin, I've seen it. The river Unyus in Sligo, and utter incantations against them. The people of the goddess Danu, however, were not yet quite ready for battle. So the Dagda decided to visit the Fomorian camp as an ambassador, and by parleying with them to gain a little more time. The Fomors received him with apparent courtesy, and, to celebrate his coming, prepared him a feast of porridge, for it was well known how fond he was of such food. They poured into their king's cauldron, which was as deep as 5 giants' fists, fourscore gallons of new milk, with meal and bacon in proportion. To this they added the whole carcasses of goats, sheep, and pigs. They boiled the mixture together and poured it into a hole in the ground. That's what you call a broth. Not quite porridge, but more like meaty porridge, meaty and bony porridge, you know. Now, said they, if you do not eat it all, we shall put you to death. For we will not have you go back to your own people and say that the Fomors were inhospitable. Inhospitable. And it's R, not were. We will not have you go back to your own people and say that the Fomors are inhospitable, which is, of course, what was said about them the last time under Bress. Meat into porridge. Yep, correct. Sotonar says, I am from the south of Ireland. All right, you're from Cork, is it? Or Kerry? You're from somewhere down the south where all the accents are very musical. They sound like they're singing when they're talking to you. Makes me grateful for instant oats. Me too, yeah. When you have to check the supermarket shelves on the cereal section, and all of the different array of porridge products, and you're looking for the vegetarian porridge. But they did not succeed in frightening the Dagda. I was just going to say, damn straight. The Dagda's. Funny enough, he's not the king of the Dedannans in this story in Cot Moytura, because as we know from earlier, Nuada was the king, and Lugh practically takes over all the roles of the king in preparing for battle. So, but Dagda is still very, very important. Giant's logic, says Marcus. Let's make him something that is so bad he can't even eat it. Meaty and bony porridge. Yeah, I know. I tell you, look for the vegetarian stuff. You'll be grand. He took his spoon, which was so large that two persons of our puny size might have reclined comfortably in the middle of it, dipped it into the porridge, and fished up halves of salted pork and quarters of bacon. Porridge with pork and bacon. I'm taking the piss. I'm thinking of Gimli again. Do you remember we did that before in the movie? Did somebody mention salted pork? And you can see he's almost drooling. He's licking his lips and he's drooling. Did you say salted pork? If it tastes as good as it smells, he said, it is good fare. And so it proved, for he ate it all and scraped up even what remained at the bottom of the hole. Then he went away to sleep it off, followed by the laughter of the Fomors, for his stomach was so swollen with food that he could hardly walk. It was larger than the biggest cauldron in a large house, and stood out like a sail before the wind. But the Fomor's little practical joke upon the Dagda had given the Tuatha Dé Danann time to collect their forces. It was on the eve of Samhain that the two armies came face to face. I mean, talk about something that is continued really into modern tradition at Halloween. The two armies. In other words, the dead and the living, or the good and the bad, the dark and the bright, all that stuff, Yes. So Padre Shields is talking about the tribe of Dan and that stuff, and the the Red Hand of Ulster. I'm not going to talk about that now, Padre, except to say I definitely do want to do an episode about all that, mainly to debunk it. It is British Israelite propaganda, which is related to quite, shall we say, dubious and even dubious and devious form of Anglo-Saxon white supremacy. There is a huge thing that I must do. It might even make a book. Is to we've talked about it when we've talked about Leah Foyle and when we had Mairead Carew on as a guest on the conversation episodes about the British Israelites and how they were all of their phony claims in relation to Jeremiah and the Ark of the Covenant and all that stuff. And all that stuff that you're saying there comes from the British Israelites. It all stems from the same sources. These 19th century zealots who thought for some reason that Jeremiah brought the Ark to Ireland. So I must deal with all that properly in an episode, in maybe a blog post, and maybe eventually in a book. It's very interesting stuff, but it's disturbing also because it basically tries to completely overthrow Irish history as we understand it and supplant it with a version that placates, shall we say, a narrative, an Anglo-Saxon, a British narrative, that the royals of Britain are descended from the House of David and therefore have legitimate claim over the lands of Palestine. So it's just one to be very careful of. Also, somebody is asking about Conor McDarry. If I had €1 for every person who recommends Conor McDarry's book to me, I would be a wealthy man. I read it, and it's the most greatest load of rubbish you will ever come across. And there are so many people who take it as Bible, and who believe it and fall for it. And, let's just say, don't put it on your list of sources. And that's another one that I will eventually get round to. When I get time, I'll get round to talking about McDarry's book and telling you exactly why you should avoid. And there are people who come at the area of, Celtic studies or Irish mythology or whatever, and one of the first things they read is McDarry's book, and they get a totally false narrative about the past. Unfortunately, some of those people afterwards cannot be convinced. Everything else then becomes a conspiracy. Anybody who tries to say that it's nonsense is basically told that they're the ones who are lying, all that stuff. So you have to be careful. Anyway, let's get on with it, shall we? So the dog that ate it all. And the Fomorians had actually, in that episode, had given the Dedannans time to collect their forces. It was on the eve of Samhain that the two armies came face to face. Even then, the Fomors could not believe that the people, or the Tuatha De Danann, would offer them much resistance. Talk about underestimating your enemy. "Do you think they will really dare to give us battle?" said Bress to Indech, the son of Daunu. "If they do not pay their tribute, we will pound their bones for them," he replied. Sounds very threatening. "Which is your Bible, sir?" says Chris. That's something else that I've been meaning to do, and we've been talking about for a while, is me compiling a list of what I consider to be reliable sources. But really, all you need to do is look at the likes of my Mythical Ireland book and look at the bibliography and some of the monographs that I've written, and look at the bibliography, and you'll see what would be considered scholarly and reliable sources. And I've tried in recent years to go back to the original sources. In other words, the Middle Irish itself and the best translations thereof, as a means of, because when you read Squire, you're reading an embellished version of the tale. He adds detail. He makes flourishes. He makes it more interesting, so it's always good to go back to the sources. But I must do that. I must, on the website. And again, I work full time, so I have so much to do, and only one lifetime in which to do it. But something that I desperately want to do is compile a list of reliable sources for people who are interested in finding out more. Michael Trott says the McDarry aside was worth the terrible tarry. Yes. Desiree is saying all the Dagda would need to do is break wind after eating that foul porridge, and the Fomorians would just drop dead around him, probably. The war of gods and giants naturally mirrored the warfare of the Gaels, in whose battles, and in those of the most semi-barbarous people, single combat figured largely. The main armies stood still while every day duels took place between ambitious combatants. But no great warriors, either of the Tuatha De Danann or the Fomors, took part in them. Sometimes a god, sometimes a giant. Of course, when he says god, he's talking about Tuatha De Danann. When he says giant, he's talking about the Fomorians, would be the victor. But there was a difference in the net results that astonished the Fomors. If their own swords and lances were broken, they were of no more use. And if their own champions were killed, they never came back to life again. Bloody damn inconvenient of them, isn't it? When you think about it. How dare the Fomorian warriors, when they drop dead, not come back to life again? Oh, jeez, what is modern warfare coming to at all? I jest, of course, and you know why, because we read it last week. But it was quite otherwise with the Tuatha De Danann. Weapons shattered on one day reappeared upon the next in as good condition as though they had never been used. And warriors slain on one day came back upon the morrow unhurt and ready, if necessary, to be killed again. Proper order. You're going to fight like a reincarnated, I was going to say man, deity. Yes. The Fomors decided to send someone to discover the secret of these prodigies. Yes, says Caitlin. It's just a flesh wound. Come back. Fiona Newman is saying hello from Ashbourne. A very good evening to you, Fiona. Hope you're keeping well. Good to see you. The Fomors decided to, yes. The spy they chose was Ruan, the son of Bress and of Bridget, daughter of the Dagda. Therefore, half giant and half god. He disguised himself as a Tuatha De Danann warrior and went to look for Govnu. He found him at his forge, together with Luchtane, the carpenter, and Crejne, the bronze worker. He saw how Govnu forged lance heads with 3 blows of his hammer. What do you think of that, Tom King? 3 blows to get a spearhead. Perfect. I've seen you doing it in 2.5. I won't tell anyone, but I have seen you doing it in 2.5. He saw how Govnu forged lance heads with 3 blows of his hammer, while Luchtana cut shafts for them with 3 blows of his axe. And Crejne fixed the 2 parts together so adroitly that his bronze nails needed no hammering in. He went back and told the Fomors, who sent him again. this time to tell us what really happened. Just stop making it up. No, who sent him again, this time to try and kill Govnu. He reappeared at the forge and asked for a javelin. Without suspicion, Govnu gave him one, and as soon as he got it into his hand, he thrust it through the smith's body. But Govnu plucked it out and, hurling it back at his assailant, mortally wounded him. Ha ha! That'll teach you. Don't go messing with our smith. Ruan went home to die, and his father Bress and his mother Bridget mourned for him, inventing for the purpose the Irish keening. Govnu, on the other hand, took no harm. He went to the physician Dian Kecht, who, with his daughter Aramid, was always on duty at a miraculous well called the Spring of Health. Whenever one of the Tuatha De Danann was killed or wounded, he was brought to the 2 doctors, who plunged him into the wonder-working water and brought him back to life and health again. Fantastic stuff. I remember it well, says Tom. Anne McCallum, Tom King will say, challenge accepted. Correct. Desiree Riley, after battle, you got to pull yourself together, man. Literally. Yes. Oh, there's so many comments. I'm finding it hard to keep up. Say, wonder-working water 3 times fast. Wonder-working water, wonder-working water, wonder-working water. I passed. What's my prize? The mystic spring. The mystic spring was not long, however, allowed to help the people of the goddess. A young Fomorian chief, Octrealach, son of Indech, found it out. He and a number of his companions went to it by night, each carrying a large stone from the bed of the river Drowse. These they dropped into the spring until they had filled it, dispersed the healing water, and formed a cairn above it. Legend has identified this place by the name of the Cairn of Octrealach. This success determined the Fomors to fight a pitched battle. They drew out their army in line. There was not a warrior in it who had not a coat of mail and a helmet, a stout spear, a strong buckler, and a heavy sword. Fighting the Fomors on that day, says the old author, could only be compared to one of three things: beating one's head against a rock, or plunging it into a fire, or putting one's hand into a serpent's nest. And of course, if you've been following what we've been saying about snakes in Ireland, there never were serpents in Ireland. All the great fighters of the Tuatha De Danann were drawn out opposite to them, except Lugh. A council of the gods had decided that his varied accomplishments made his life too valuable to be risked in battle. They had therefore left him behind, guarded by 9 warriors. But at the last moment, Lugh escaped from his warders and appeared in his chariot before the army. He made them a patriotic speech. "Fight bravely," he said, "that your servitude may last no longer. It is better to face death than to live in vassalage and pay tribute." With these encouraging words, he drove round the ranks, standing on tiptoe, so that all the Tuatha De Danann might see him. Think of Braveheart or King Theoden in the Battle of the Pelennor Fields in the Lord of the Rings movies. Now, I'm just going to do a quick page check. I'm half thinking of going to a finish with this chapter. Oh, hang on. One, 2, 3, 4. Might be too much. We'll see how we get on. The Fomors saw him too and marvelled. "It seems wonderful to me," said Bress to his druids, "that the sun should rise in the west today and in the east every other day." "It would be better for us if it were so," replied the druids. "What else can it be then?" asked Bress. "It is the radiance of the face of Lugh of the Long Arms," they said. And of course, this was the quote that inspired Patrick McCafferty, who was a guest on our conversation series, in terms of thinking that that might be a reference to a comet appearing in the western twilight. Then the two armies charged each other with a great shout. Spears and lances smote against shields, and so great was the shouting of the fighters, the shattering of shields, the clattering of swords, the rattling of quivers, and the whistling of darts and javelins, that it seemed as if thunder rolled everywhere. Thank you, Desiree, for the encouraging words. I'm not sure that I can. If the voice doesn't give out, we'll be fine. They fought so closely that the heads, hands, and feet of those on one side were touching the heads, hands, and feet of those on the other side. They shed so much blood on the ground that it became hard to stand on without slipping. And the river of Unshan which is spelled differently now than it was a while ago. Anyway, never mind. That the river of Unshan was filled with dead bodies. So hard and swift and bloody and cruel was the battle. Many great chiefs fell on each side. Ogma, the champion of the Tuatha De Danann, killed Indech, the son of the goddess Daunu. But meanwhile, Balor of the mighty blows raged among the gods, slaying their king Nuada of the silver hand, as well as Macha, one of his warlike wives. And of course, if you followed the episodes we did about Moytura, you'll know that that reference to Balor killing Nuada was the only mention of Nuada after Lugh had come to Tara. In other words, Lugh had really taken over the reign in all but name. The sun god, this is Lugh, and again, it won't say that. This is Squire's. Is that called an interpolation? No. This is Squire's embellishment. The sun god shouted a challenge to his grandfather in the Fomorian speech. Balor heard it and prepared to use his death-dealing eye. "Lift up my eyelid," he said to his henchman, "that I may see this chatterer who talks with me." And here we have to think of Balor's evil eye being a bit like the Eye of Sauron, as it is depicted in the Lord of the Rings movies. The attendants lifted Balor's eye with a hook, and if the glance of the eye beneath it had rested upon Lugh, he would certainly have perished. But when it was half opened, Lugh flung a magic stone which struck Balor's eye out through the back of his head. The eye fell on the ground behind Balor and destroyed a whole rank of thrice 9 Fomors who were unlucky enough to be within sight of it. And of course, 3 9s is 27, which is kind of a lunar number. It's kind of the time it takes the moon to do a circuit of the sky, just a little bit more than 27 days. Giant oak. Has anyone ever done a family tree of all the deities? Several have tried it. Mark, what's his name? What's that? Mark, is it Mark Williams? No, is he a snooker player? Why am I getting confused? Oh, it can't. Yeah, Ireland's Immortals is a very good book about the Tuatha Dé Danann. It's a good place to start. It's very complicated, though, because different stories will give different relationships. So there's no single family tree possible. There we go. Mavanway's saying the same things. Yeah, Mark Williams. Am I right? Is Mark Williams a snooker player? Or am I completely... Yes, he is, of course. That's what I'm confused about. Mark Williams, the snooker player, did not write a book about the Tuatha Dé Danann. It's a different Mark Williams. Just like Steve Davis, the archaeologist who does so much work in the Boyne Valley, is not Steve Davis, the snooker player. Yes, Caitlin Moon is also recommending Mark's book, Ireland's Immortals. An ancient poem has handed down the secret of this magic stone. It is there called a tathlum, meaning a concrete ball. Now, I have a short video that I recorded years ago on the Mythical Ireland YouTube channel about the tathlum, but it's probably a repeat of what I'm going to say here, so maybe there's no point even sharing it with you. But anyway, it's there if you needed it. It is there called a tathlum, meaning a concrete ball, such as the ancient warriors used sometimes to make out of the brains of dead enemies, hardened with lime. You thought, the porridge was bad, because you don't have to eat the concrete. A tathlum, heavy, fiery, firm, which the Tuatha Dé Danann had with them. It was that broke the fierce Balor's eye of old in the battle of the great armies. This is a translation of that poem. The blood of toads and furious bears, and the blood of the noble lion, the blood of vipers and of Osmund's trunks, it was of these that tathlum was composed. The sand of the swift Armorian sea, and the sand of the teeming Red Sea, all these, being first purified, were used in the composition of the tathlum. Brian, the son of Behar, no mean warrior, who on the ocean's eastern border reigned. It was he that fused and smoothly formed. It was he that fashioned the tathlum. To the hero Lugh was given this concrete ball, no soft missile. In Moytura of shrieking wails, from his hand he threw the tathlum. And that was a translation from Eugene O'Curry. And of course, we have read previously some of the translation of Moytura by Elizabeth Gray, isn't it? Isn't that her name? Is it Elizabeth Gray or Catherine Gray? It's Elizabeth Gray, I'm sure. Yeah. E.A. Gray. Yes, Elizabeth A. Gray, published by the Irish Texts Society, if you're interested. In the academic or scholarly source. In other words, the reliable source of the story of Cát Moytura. This blinding of the terrible Balor turned the I was going to say Fomorians. That's not what it says, Anthony. Just read the text. This blinding of the terrible Balor turned the fortunes of the fight, for the Fomors wavered, and the Morrigu came and encouraged the Tuatha Dé Danann with a song, beginning, "Kings, arise to the battle," so that they took fresh heart and drove the Fomors headlong back to their country underneath the sea. Such was the battle which is called in Irish Moytura na Fomorach, that is to say, the plain of the towers of the Fomors, and more popularly, the Battle of Moytura the Northern, to distinguish it from the other Battle of Moytura fought by the Tuatha Dé Danann against the Fir Bolgs further to the south, which is Moytura Cong. That doesn't say that there. More of the Fomors were killed in it, says the ancient manuscript, than there are stars in the sky. Grains of sand on the seashore, snowflakes in winter, drops of dew upon the meadows in springtime, hailstones during a storm, blades of grass trodden under horses' feet. Yeah, we get it. Okay, all right. It's a big number. We get it. Under horses' feet. Or Manannán, son of Lear's white horses, the waves of the sea when a tempest breaks. The towers or pillars said to mark the graves of the combatants still stand upon the plain of Carrowmore, near Sligo, and form, in the opinion of Dr. Petrie, the finest collection of prehistoric monuments in the world, with the sole exception of Carnac in Brittany. Megalithic structures of almost every kind are found among them. Stone cairns with dolmens in their interiors, dolmens standing open and alone, dolmens surrounded by 1, 2, or 3 circles of stones, and circles without dolmens, to the number of over 100. 64 of such prehistoric remains stand together upon an elevated plateau not more than a mile across, and make the battlefield of Moytura, though the least known, perhaps the most impressive of all primeval ruins. What they really commemorated, we may never know, but in all probability, the place was the scene of some important, decisive early battle, the monuments marking the graves of the chieftains who were interred as the result of it. And I'm nearly finished. I have a page or a couple of pages to go. And I know we're running on a bit, but if you don't mind, I'll keep going. Or yeah, well, I wouldn't be. I'm just saying, but I certainly wouldn't rely on Wikipedia as a source. Some of the articles on Wikipedia are brilliant because they're edited by, an expert, but some of them aren't. Those which have been examined were found to contain burnt wood and the half-burnt bones of men and horses, as well as implements of flint and bone. The actors, therefore, were still in the Neolithic age. Whether the horses were domesticated ones buried with their riders, or wild ones eaten at the funeral feasts, it would be hard to decide. The history of the real event must have been long lost, even at the early date when its relics were pointed out as the records of a battle between the gods and the giants of Gaelic myth. The Tuatha Dé Danann, following the routed Fomors, overtook and captured Bress. He begged Lugh to spare his life. "What ransom will you pay for it?" asked Lugh. "I will guarantee that the cows of Ireland shall always be in milk," promised Bress. Which is strange, because this is the same guy who put meagre portions out when he was the king. But before accepting, Lugh took counsel with his druids. What good will that be, they decided, if Bress does not also lengthen the lives of the cows? This was beyond the power of Bress to do, so he made another offer. "Tell your people," he said to Lugh, "that if they will spare my life, they shall have a good wheat harvest every year. But they said, we already have the spring to plough and sow in, the summer to ripen the crops, the autumn for reaping, and the winter in which to eat the bread. And that is all we want. Chris Newbury, whatever you have in yourself. Lou told this to Bress, but he also said, you shall have your life in return for a much less service to us than that. What is it? Asked Bress. Tell us when we ought to plough, when we ought to sow, and when we ought to harvest. Bress replied, you should plough on a Tuesday, sow on a Tuesday, and harvest on a Tuesday. Long before the notion of a day called Tuesday ever arose, funnily enough. And this lying maxim, says the story, saved Bress's life. Lou, the Dagda, and Ogma still pursued the Fomors, who had carried off in their flight the Dagda's harp. They followed them into the submarine palace where Bress and Elathan lived, and there they saw the harp hanging on the wall. This harp of the Dagda's would not play without its owner's leave. The Dagda sang to it, come, oak of the two cries, come, hand of fourfold music, come summer, come winter, voice of harps, bellows and flutes. For the Dagda's harp had these two names. It was called Oak of the Two Cries and Hand of Fourfold Music. It leaped down from the wall, killing 9 of the Fomors as it passed, kind of a handy musical weapon, and came into the Dagda's hand. The Dagda played to the Fomors the 3 tunes known to all clever harpists, the weeping tune, the laughing tune, and the sleeping tune. While he played the weeping tune, they were bowed with weeping. While he played the laughing tune, they rocked with laughter. And when he played the sleeping tune, they all fell asleep. And while they slept, Lou, the Dagda, and Ogma got away safely. Next, the Dagda brought the black-maned heifer, which he had, by the advice of Angus, son of the young, obtained from Bress. The wisdom of Angus had been shown in this advice, for it was this very heifer that the cattle of the people of the goddess Danu were accustomed to follow, wherever it lowed. Now, when it lowed, all the cattle which the Fomors had taken away from the Tuatha Dé Danann came back again. We were talking about boomerang apples earlier on. Now we have boomerang cattle. They go away and they come back again. Kathy May Deo is in the house. I think you must be on your lunch break. But welcome. It's good to see you here. And Caitlin is saying, as a historic harpist, I'm wondering if those 3 tunes are related to any surviving techniques. I'm going to have to do a bit of research. Yeah, it's fascinating stuff. These musical weapons. Very handy if you want to put an army to sleep or if you want to make them roll around the place crying. Yet the power of the Fomors was not wholly broken. 4 of them still carried on a desultory warfare by spoiling the corn, fruit, and milk of their conquerors, which is interesting because after the Milesians take Ireland from the Dé Dananns, one of the things that the Dé Dananns do, apparently out of revenge, is to make the crop fail. So it's a repeating theme in the invasion mythology. But the Morrigu and Bow and Midger and Angus pursued them and drove them out of Ireland forever. And that's from the Book of Fermoy. And that's an interesting combination because Midger and Angus, of course, appear in Tuchmark Etain. Morrigu and Bow are said to be 2 parts of a triplicate deity, you know. Last of all, the Morrigu and Bow went up onto the summits of all the high mountains of Ireland and proclaimed the victory. All the lesser gods who had not been in the battle came round and heard the news. And Bow sang a song which began, Peace mounts to the heavens, The heavens descend to earth. Earth lies under the heavens. Everyone is strong. But the rest of it has been lost and forgotten, which isn't true. It's in Elizabeth Gray's book. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, hasn't our good friend, well, I know I'm not mistaken in this case, um, 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 Morgan Daimler attempted to translate parts of Cot Moytura, which were not translated by either, was it Whitley Stokes? Or was it Curry and Gray, Elizabeth Gray? I'm just looking for that bit, which is towards the end. She can now, peace up to heaven. Now Kodawan, Dawan Foniv, Niert Hikach, On Forlan, Laundamil, Midaska, etc., etc. Yeah, and only some of it is translated in Gray's translation. So, because she struggled with. But there's a full translation of it in Morgan Daimler's book about Cot Moytura. Then she added a prophecy in which she foretold the approaching end of the divine age and the beginning of a new one, in which summers would be flowerless and cows milkless, and women shameless, and men strengthless, in which there would be trees without fruit and seas without fish, when old men would give false judgments and legislators make unjust laws, when warriors would betray one another, and men would be thieves, and there would be no more virtue left in the world. That is the end of chapter 9. And I'm kind of thinking that maybe we might, pause for questions and comments before saying good night for the time being until the next episode. Very happy to take any questions, bearing in mind that my ability to answer those is as only as a dedicated amateur rather than a scholar or a professional. So let me just quickly scroll. Quite a lot of discussion, I think, going on about various things to do with the tribe of Dan and Jeremiah and Tia Tephi and all that stuff. All I will say about that for now is that almost all of that is British Israelite, Anglo-Saxon, white supremacist propaganda. So be careful where you go with that stuff, or how much you believe it, or how much credibility you give to it. Though it be a Tuesday and not a Monday, 'tis still a grand way to spend an hour or more of any day. On a day of any kind of weather. And I really hope that summer comes in Ontario and every part of Canada soon. What part of the country are the two Moytura battlefields? The northern Moytura is at Carrowmore in County Sligo, and the southern is at Cong, in the vicinity of Cong, in the county of Mayo. I think isn't that it's in Mayo, isn't it? So they are sort of distinguished by locale, Thanks, Elaine. Glad that you enjoyed it. Pat is listening while making dinner. Oh, is there something for everyone? And I hope it doesn't consist of porridge oats with the bodies of goats and sheep and all sorts of stuff in it. No, I'm sure it's much, much, much greater delicacy than that. I would like to say thank you very much. However, my son came into the room and asked what I was doing watching a priest. Definitely not a priest. Question: was Finn McCool a Fomorian but a good guy, as he is the only giant in Ireland who wasn't killed? It's a good question, and of course, remember that that whole thing about the one-eyed salmon and all of that. I know the salmon isn't fin necessarily, but the whole thing about being one-eyed, on the one hand, has this sort of detrimental aspect, which is that you're a Fomorian and you're evil. But on the other hand, the one eye gave you greater insight and wisdom. Finn McCool. Uh, what is the Irish name of the Giant's Causeway? Something Navamori. The giant, the steps. Is it the steps of the giant? I should know this. It's in the stuff, isn't it, that I did about Patrick. Hang on. Giant's Causeway. Give me 1 second. Yeah. Is it Clocha na Vamori or what? Clochon na Vamori, yeah, which means the stepping stones of the. See, Fomorians is a word that means giants, but it's associated with those sort of evil pirate race, undersea monster types, Thank you, Michael. Glad you appreciate the humor. Of course, you get it all first on the old Facebook. Don't give away the secret. Wayne Bird, great night. Sleep well, everyone. Yes, indeed, and the same to you. Yeah, most sources relate Jeremiah to Olafola, which is the greatest load of nonsense, Patter. Absolute nonsense. It's rubbish. And again, just to say that any of the sources that say Olafola was Jeremiah are British Israelite, Anglo-Saxon propaganda sources trying to get you to believe a certain narrative, that feeds into some divine origin of the British royal family. Be very careful with that stuff. Olafola was the chief poet of Ireland. That's what it means. It doesn't have anything to do with Jeremiah. Sure, it's grand being a priest, Ted. Is there anything to be said for another mass? All I'm missing is the white collar. Maybe I should wear a collar, just for the crack for next week, Adrian, thank you for joining us. You're very welcome. Always a pleasure. Just looking for any last questions before I say over and out. Until next time. Sotonar has a question. Do you think there's any link between the one-eyed salmon and Odin's mythic archetype, as he gave up his eye for wisdom, as he's sometimes represented as a salmon? Well, not knowing the details of said story, I would immediately say, just from your comment, that there might be. Absolutely, it looks like it. Fintan was the name of the salmon of knowledge. In one of the sources, it's described as being Fintan, the one-eyed salmon, that it had its eye plucked out by a bird. And even Bowen, who is deprived of an eye after going to the well of Segish, or Nectan's well, she's also deprived of an arm and a leg. And they say that, even being deprived of a leg, it's almost like this stance, this one-legged and one-eyed stance, in which these, not characteristics, these gifts of prophecy and foresight and insight come to you, like the Imbus Forestney, etc., in the Salmon of Knowledge story. It sounds like there might be familiarities there. I never knew the salmon had a name. Yeah, in one of the sources, I think it's in my monograph, available for, I think it's €10 on the Mythical Ireland website. I think the source of that is in my, of course, will I be able to find it now in the space of a couple of seconds? Certainly there was a salmon at Asroa, and there's a story there too. Of course, there's no index because it's a short book. Yeah. The blind one of Asaro, Gull Asarua. Because it was one-eyed, the salmon, quote, as might be expected, is identified with the all-knowing Fintan, unquote. Thus, another scholar suggests that Fintan may be, quote, one of the numerous personifications and late transformations of an archaic deity Finn who possesses and imposes hidden knowledge, unquote. Yeah, it's definitely there. It's in the chapter of my monograph called "The Salmon and the Deity." If you're interested, and if you buy a copy of that on my website, I'll sign it for you. All books that leave the Mythical Ireland Library that are ordered through the Mythical Ireland website at mythicalireland.com are signed. So there you go. Anyway, I'm going to call it a night, and I will gladly. Well, I'll see you all next week, I hope. I'll probably see some of you in the interim. There has been recent scholar linking Balor to Odin, focused on disability studies in Old Norse saga specifically. Sounds like interesting reading, Caitlin, and perhaps a book I should add to my ever burgeoning list of things to be read, but maybe not. No, I should definitely have it, and it sounds fascinating. Would I get the time to read it? That's the question, of course. Good night, Desiree. Thanks for joining us, and indeed, Tom King, good to have seen you. I've made a butter paneer, sag alu dal and agu. Sorry, what? I haven't a clue what all of that is. But yeah, I mean, I hope it's tasty. I hope it's tasty. Yeah, too many questions now. Next week, next time. This is 221, so there's time at the end of each one for more questions. So we'll see you. Yeah, Mavanwe said the family trees in Ireland's immortals aren't what I thought. Yeah, but I think the reason you never see a Tuatha Dé Danann family tree is because it's just too convoluted. You just can't make them join up. There's too many, it's a mishmash. Yeah. You could do perhaps family trees from different branches of mythology. Branches, that's a good one when we're talking about trees. But if you try to do an overall family tree, it's just impossible. A family tree is more like a bush, says Caitlin. A wild and unclipped bush, yes, with branches everywhere. Yeah. Anyway, take it easy, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you all next time on Live Irish Myths. In the meantime, have a good one. Have a great afternoon, evening, morning, night, wherever you are in the world. A Culasov, Slán go Fóill, Ichawa, and most importantly, of course, Tóca Bugé. Take it easy.